As the political pundits and the mainstream media continue to talk about the polls and a toss-up election, there's something going on beneath the surface that really needs to get more attention. It's the advantage amongst newly registered voters for Kamala Harris, something that a lot of the pundits are missing and that could decide the election. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Lawman, here on the MeidasTouch network. So you've seen all the talking heads, and they talk about, oh, this is a toss-up, and yeah, it's important for us not to get complacent, Meidas mighty. That's true. But there's something that has been relatively underreported, where there is a surge in the number of newly registered voters. These are people who are not on the voter file, so they don't get called by pollsters. They're not appearing in any of the analyses that you see on mainstream media. But there's one analyst who has been following these trends, and it's worth a look. Ton Bonnier, who you can find him on X at TBONIER. He is a senior advisor to Target Smart, and he has been putting out the latest when it comes to the newly registered voters. And this is some really good data for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. According to Bonnier, we now have voter file updates for 38 states that cover the week of July 21st, affording us the opportunity to quantify the reaction of the electorate to VP Harris as the nominee. Our analysis compares new registrations during the week of July 21st to the same week in 2020. For the sake of consistency, overall, total registrations were actually slightly down in 2024 relative to 2020. But what do the subgroups show? First, looking at partisanship. We use modeled party ID because not all states allow voters to register with the party. The results are stark. The 2020 new registrations were +3 GOP. As Harris took over the ticket, new registrants were +22 D. And here's a chart that shows this. Model GOP new registration dropped 34% between that same week in 2020 versus 2024, while model Democratic new registration increased by 32%. The share of new registrants under the age of 30 increased from 36% to 46%. These charts are a little messy, but Hispanic new registrants increased by 33%. Black new registrants increased by 22%. Young Hispanic women increased by 71%, and young black women by 67%. And as far as gender overall, the new registrants in 2020 were +2 women, and in 2024 were +8 women. So what does this all mean? Clearly, the Harris campaign inspired a large surge of enthusiasm from young voters, women, Democrats, and voters of color, to the extent that Dems were struggling with an enthusiasm gap in this race prior to July 21st. The tables have turned. You add to that the outperformance of Democrats ever since the Dobbs decision, ever since Roe versus Wade has been overturned. You have seen Democrats outperform. They keep winning special elections. These are things that don't seem to be reflected in the polls. You know what's also not reflected in the polls? Trump's underperformance. And I know you've heard this many times that we have to have such a huge lead in the polls because there's that silent Trump vote out there. People are too embarrassed to say they're going to vote for Trump, and so they don't tell that to pollsters. But what we've seen in this cycle so far is the opposite. We have actually seen Trump underperform. That's why in just about every Republican primary state, Trump underperformed his numbers in the polling. That's why Nikki Haley, even after she dropped out of the race, continued to outperform. Nikki Haley continued to do better than the polls would have indicated. And that's why Kamala Harris, during her convention speech and the way she's been campaigning, has been reaching out to those Nikki Haley voters. They're up for grabs. So when people say, well, the polls don't reveal the secret Trump vote, in the year 2024, it's quite the opposite. And in just about every primary state, Trump has underperformed what he was supposed to get according to the polls. I mean, back when Trump was running against Biden, Newsweek said, while Trump is all but guaranteed to win the GOP primary, there have been suggestions that the recent results mean he will struggle to gain enough support to defeat President Joe Biden in November's general election. The claims were amplified by Haley, who barely campaigned in Michigan, but still received nearly 300,000 votes in the swing state. Michigan is the fourth state in a row Trump has underperformed public polling. Democratic political strategist Simon Rosenberg said on X, Trump and the GOP are weak, not strong. And as I pointed out, they've been having performance problems since Dobbs. And we're seeing these problems, their struggle in early 2024. And Justin Wolfers, a professor of public policy and economics at the University of Michigan, said that the recent primary results gave 4 separate examples of Trump dramatically underperforming. The idea that there are shy Trumpers seems dead wrong, at least within the Republican primary electorate. Wolfers posted, the harder question is whether general election polls also overstate his popularity. According to Politico, in Michigan, Trump's margin over Haley was 15.3 points smaller in the actual results than in the final polling average. Pollsters also had double-digit whiffs in Massachusetts, a 14.3 point difference. Tennessee, 11.3 points, and Virginia, 20.8 points. If past is prologue, we are looking at something I think that definitely benefits Kamala Harris. Number one, the registration advantages amongst demographic groups that normally support Democrats are way up. The surge of energy is way up. Number two, Donald Trump's hidden vote at least didn't appear in the primary election. In fact, quite the opposite. He underperformed his numbers. And number three, in swing states, Tom Bonier's data shows that Kamala Harris is doing very well with these newly registered voters. Let's take a look. And the most important swing state is Pennsylvania. That's the key state to this election. At long last, we have a Pennsylvania voter file update that includes the week of July 21st after VP Harris ascended to the top of the ticket. Okay, first, when compared to the same week in 2020, total new registrations increased by 34.3% in Pennsylvania in the week following Biden's withdrawal. Democratic registration increased by 46.6%, GOP by 21.1%. Demographically, once again, as we have seen in other states over the same time period, young voters led the way. New registrations among voters under 30 increased by a shocking 59.6% relative to 2020. New registrations among women increased by 49%. Black voters, 110%. Not a typo. It gets even harder to believe, though. New registrations among black women under 30 increased by 262% compared to the same week in 2020. That is more than a 3.5 times increase. And states where the number of black women new registrants under the age of 30 more than quadrupled, Louisiana. More than tripled, Maryland. North Carolina, swing state. Pennsylvania, swing state. More than doubled, Iowa, Indiana, Nebraska, which has a congressional district that's a swing district that's very important to the Electoral College, and Ohio. Even in red Texas, which is getting more competitive, there's a Kamala Harris effect. In 2020, during the 15th week out from Election Day, the modeled partisanship of new registrants was plus 16 GOP. During the same week this year, they were plus 10 Democratic. In terms of age, the 2024 week 15 new registrants in Texas were much younger, with 46% under 30 as compared to 39% in 2020. Hispanic voters saw a sharp increase in registration as well. We're rapidly approaching the point where white voters will not comprise a majority of new registrants in Texas. And if you're wondering about Florida or Arizona, well, those numbers have not been updated yet. These are states where the numbers have updated. So you can see this happening around the country, but importantly, in the swing states, it could be decisive. So Meidas Mighty, stay confident, but stay vigilant. Because yes, we got to prepare that this is going to be a close election. We got to keep working hard, but the numbers are in our favor. Yes, it's frustrating that it seems that pollsters are incorporating a lot of these low-quality GOP polls, Republican-dominated pollsters who add their numbers to the mix, and maybe I should do a video on that next time, that bring down the total polling averages when Kamala Harris is clearly ahead in the polls, but it brings it down and it makes it into a dead even race, or a race where Republicans say Donald Trump is ahead. Nate Silver says he's ahead. Throw that stuff out. Focus on just working hard until November and look at some of this other data that is not being covered by a lot of these talking heads, like newly registered voters. They're the ones not being polled. and they could be decisive. So let's keep up the good work, Midas Mighty. I'm Dave Aronberg, aka the Florida Lawman, here on the MeidasTouch Network. If you like this video, please like and leave a comment below, share with a friend. Also, check out our sister channel, True Crime MTN. I host a lot of those videos over there where we cover the hot true crime cases that don't make it onto the main MeidasTouch network. Things like the upcoming Donna Adelson trial that has garnered a lot of attention around the world. I'll see you there, and I'll also see you here next time.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.